Welcome back. My name is Johan van Niekerk, and we are discussing the business formula. If you have watched our previous videos, you will know that we've been discussing how do you guarantee success in a business? How do you go from idea to startup to self-employed and eventually into a business owner? Today, we're going to be looking at how do you transition from self-employed to business owner? How do you build a medium-sized business so that you can start extracting yourself from that business? Let's do a quick recap. We spoke about it all starts with your personal mindset and your personal development. And we went through that in the first video. What is required? What do you need to look at? How do you determine who you are, what you stand for, and actually what you are going to sell? That is the foundation of building any business. I like to use visuals. Like I've said before, we use the visuals of building a house, and that personal mindset and personal development, that's the foundation of a house. You need to build the foundation first. Then we went into what takes it to build the walls, how do you secure the house, how do you build the roof, how do you fit it out, and how do you eventually build out the interior and design the interior so that you have a nice, comfortable space to live in. That was all done in the previous few videos. Make sure, like I said, to check those out as well. Today, we are going to use the example of a skyscraper and how to transition from a small business to a big business. Skyscrapers can get very, very tall, but there's a method to how they are being built. Again, you need to start with a foundation. And usually what happens is they dig out the ground underneath, and then they drill very deep holes. We call it pilings. Those pilings go down to bedrock. They anchor this very tall building to make sure that it stays stable in the wind and that it stays stable when there's earthquakes, there's hurricanes, there's all kinds of weather. It can survive the harshest of conditions. And that is what I want you to visualize. What we built before, this house becomes a part of the foundation of building a skyscraper. The house has given you one of the pilings that you need to make sure that you build a stable foundation so that you can continue growing and expanding. When you think as well about if you've seen a skyscraper being built, yes, it starts with a foundation, then next up they build floor by floor. They do the steel work, they pour the concrete, and then they put in the windows, and then they do the fit out. And I'm going to use those visuals to explain to you how we grow from self-employed into a business owner. And remember, what does that mean? Self-employed means you are required in your business. You need to be there. You need to enjoy your house. You made it nice for yourself. And so you are going to still be spending a lot of time in your business. And what a skyscraper means is that you go from running everything to just starting to manage the building. You cannot do all things anymore. You can't manage everybody and everything. You need to start putting together teams that manages this, teams that build the skyscraper. You can't build it by yourself. It's possible to build a nice house for yourself, by yourself and with your own labor. It's not possible to build a skyscraper. So we have to look at what does it take? What technology can we bring in? What people do we need? How do we expand and grow and make sure that that skyscraper keeps building? And the beauty of the system is that you can choose how many floors you want to build. We will make sure that the foundation is strong enough to carry everything and anything that you can think of. Let's start talking about that. Like I said, the house, all the work that you did before, you can compress that. You're not throwing it away. That becomes one of the pilings. And now I'm going to go into a few of the other things. You need to make it even more robust to make sure that this building is strong and stable. And so what we're going to do, the first thing that we look at when we start moving into the building a business, a medium-sized business, is we look again at the foundation. That's the first element. The first of four elements in terms of growing into a larger business. The first one is the foundation. We're going to be discussing that foundation and what's required in that foundation still in this video. But I first, again, like I said, I want to give you guys an overview of the four elements that it takes that you have to be aware of when you grow a small business into a medium-sized business. Now that you know the first element is the foundation, the next one we have to look at is business development. You have to now really start planning your business development. You might think you've been in control. You might think that you've been driving business development up until this point in time, but you were probably mostly reactive up until this point in time. And we have to become proactive about business development and what it requires. And we'll be looking at all the different elements of business development and what you need to do within that. The third element that we are then going to move on to is organizational structure. This is becoming then very important because you are starting to seriously employ people at this point in time. And you need to be aware of where you need people, how the organizational structure will be looking like. We need to start talking about the different departments that needs to be created, who will be responsible for what. There's so many different elements these days. Obviously, traditionally, we talk about finance, we talk about HR, we talk about marketing, but we'll be looking at all the additional things that we need today and what does it take and what does it require to build these different departments. Who should be responsible for what? And most importantly, I'm all about efficiencies. How can we integrate those so that we can have certain departments doing more than one thing? That is the third element. And then the fourth and the last element is evolution. How do you keep evolving? We don't want revolution at this stage. Revolution happens in small businesses. Evolution happens in bigger businesses. And so we start looking at how do you keep evolving so that you may keep growing, that you may stay in the market, that you don't slowly die. There's an old saying that says, if you are not growing, you are slowly dying. And that adage is very, very true, especially in today's day and age where we have such a fast-paced business world. So we are then going to be going into the elements of evolution. What do you require there? How do you make sure that your company stays at the cutting edge and remains relevant for generations to come, and eventually allows you to grow from a medium-sized business into a big business so that you can get out of the business owner element and start moving into essentially an investor element where your companies are run for you and you don't have to be involved if you don't want to be. Now that I've given you that overview, those 4 different elements, I'm going to be talking now about the first element, the foundation. Again, I repeat myself, but I'm saying we take the house, we compress it, we make that one of the pilings. And then we have to review quite a few things that we've done up until now. We have to say, are we still relevant in terms of what we've created? And so what we need to look at this point in time to firm up this foundation and to make sure that the foundation is strong is we have to look at values, and not just values. We already spoke about values initially, but is that value still relevant? Does this still apply to your company? What has changed? Quite a few years would have gone past between when you started the company and when you are here. Again, timelines are very difficult to determine. It depends on you, it depends on your country, it depends on your industry, it depends on the world economy, your local economy. There's so many different elements that we also touch on when we go through these things. But to get to this point where you grow from being self-employed into a medium-sized company, if you're really, really good at what you do, it might take 3 years. If you are average, it would take between 5 and 10. Can take longer. It depends, again, like I said, on all these elements that I mentioned. But we have to look at, are these elements that we have designed, is it still applicable in the business that we run today? Because you might have 15, 20 employees at this point in time, might even be a few more. And you need to make sure that your values still align. You still stand for what you originally stood for. And you need to align that and make sure about it. We also have to look at values culture, because when you are in your business every day, it's quite easy to live your values, but you have to create a culture of values. Your company has to be value driven. In this world today, it is so easy to see through the fakeness of things. We intrinsically know when things don't fit. And so we have to see, how do we live this culture? It's easy for you to live it. How do you instill this in the people that you work with, the people that you partner with, your employees, your business partners? You need to make sure that all of this is still in alignment. We also then have to review the vision. The original vision that you created for yourself, is it still current? Is it still real? Do you need to expand on this vision? I will tell you that more than 90% of the time, this is the time where everybody expands their vision. They realize that they can go further than they originally thought. And so the vision tends to be expanded here. You need to align that. You need to make sure that they have their roadmap on where they're going. Same with the mission. What is your mission? How are you changing your industry? How are you changing the business environment that you are in? We need to review that as well. And then an important part, we spoke about goals in earlier videos as well. But goals is not the only thing. Obviously, we constantly review goals, but we also have to start thinking about things like goal planning. We have to start thinking about, how do we plan for goals? How do we set timelines for them? When do they need to become apparent? When do they need to be reviewed? We need to create a system around this, because this is the secret. In order to start scaling, you have to start creating systems. And these are the foundations of finding those things and starting to create these systems that you can continuously grow with. Once you've reviewed all of these things, we have to start really looking at your corporate culture. and your corporate philosophy. What do you live? What do you want your employees to live? We think about marketing always as just, hey, what do you see on social media? You see these videos on social media, you see other companies doing ads on social media, and that's what you think about. But hey, it's so much more than that. What is your corporate culture like? What is it like to work for you? The old archaic way of this dictatorship where, hey, you do as I say, you don't do as I do, boss style, is long gone, because guess what happens? Quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is a buzzword in the industry right now, and we lose so much productivity because of that. We lose productivity because we have toxic bosses. How do you make sure that you are not one of those? How do you make sure that your employees, when they go to a barbecue or they go to a wedding or they go to a family reunion, that they rant and rave about your company? This is all about your corporate culture. And corporate culture is not about wearing sneakers and having some nice beanbags anymore, despite what the big companies think. Corporate culture is very much what you live for. And does your employees and the people you work for, do they also live that? And they will actually go and blow your trumpet outside of the company without being asked to do so. If you have a really good corporate culture, this is what will happen. And there's some really, really valuable information around that. Another thing that we then have to do is we have to start looking at the company organogram. You have to create an organogram that looks at where do you have people employed. You have to highlight their skill sets. You have to highlight their job roles. You have to highlight what they are doing. And we have to create an organogram so that we understand where people slot into our business model. And this also helps, in the next section we'll be discussing this a bit more, it also starts then helping you with role planning, and it starts helping you with job planning. All of these things integrate. Like I said, we are building floors in a skyscraper, one by one by one by one. And all of these things you'll be repeating over and over again. So you'll be reviewing it, you'll make sure it's good, and then you'll move on to the next level. But the organogram helps you see where you have people, and it also helps you see where you have shortages. I have a client that I'm helping at the moment that is also in this transition from self-employed to a medium-sized business. And this client is exactly there. They currently have about 25 employees. The company is expanding, it's growing, but they are not sure how to plan for the future. And so this organogram helps you plan. Where do you need to employ? By when do you need to employ? The organogram gives you the initial insight into that specific section. You have to say at this point, create an organogram. We'll also be talking about what's the best way to create that. How do you keep it up to date? How do you make sure that everything that is there that needs to be there? The last main element of this foundation is we start looking at role descriptions and job descriptions. Because I see a lot of time is in the HR departments that people really, really have problems. How do they differentiate? How do they define what type of support they need, what type of people they need? This is where we start looking at part of the organogram. We start looking at role descriptions. Who is responsible for what? The same client I just mentioned an example. I mean, he had an office manager. That office manager was responsible for all the finances, all the purchasing and everything else over the last 15 years that they've been growing to this point. And guess what? Now it's time that those roles split, and it becomes difficult. These are also elements. So this lady that has fulfilled all of these roles, they need to split the roles out now because she can't handle everything anymore. And so they need to appoint somebody that can run the office, and they need to move her into finance. And because she's been there for so long, they really trust her. They want her to run the finances. But there is a whole procedure about what does he keep doing? What does the new person have to do? How do we split these roles, and how do we manage the change? These are all elements that has to be thought about at this point in time. We'll go more in depth in the company structure and the organizational structure into these elements. But these are things that you have to start thinking about now, because you need this overview of how you are going to build this skyscraper that I've been talking about. So that was the overview for today. Like I say, just a quick recap. We talked about the 4 different elements that is required to grow from a self-employed into a business owner, to start building a medium-sized business. We went then into the elements of the foundation and discussed the different elements that is required. Again, remember, I've got this checklist. I've already put this business formula that I've designed on a piece of paper, and all of you are welcome to get it for free. Make sure that you click the link below. It'll lead you to our website. Fill in the form, and we will send it to you completely free of charge. And this way you can check where you are in this process and where you might need to put in some more effort or might even need some help.